Well, every film has an elevator pitch. Moby Dick, crazy guy and a fish. What I honestly came up with and have used ever since, this was kind of squatsy with B-17s. I mean, that was the compass we steered the film towards. It wasn't, I consciously wanted to do an art film, Herzogian art film if you want, that also scratched primal World War II nerdery. I went looking for color footage of World War II airplanes because I had an idea of restoring it, or working with the National Archives because I'm a World War II airplane geek. And my partner, Paul Allen, billionaire Paul Allen, is another World War II airplane geek. Only he buys and restores into flying condition real World War II airplanes. I don't quite have that budget. So I talked them into covering a researcher to look around the National Archives just to see what was there. And the first day, the researcher came back and said, well, there's this, there's that, there's the outtakes from the Memphis Belle, and I stopped her there saying, excuse me. So I'll say the stuff was there, it was hiding in plain sight, but I recognized the potential instantly that there was something there and that there could be a feature film there. And I stopped immediately, and this film pretty much popped in my head. I mean, obviously there were several thousand creative choices to be made, but the film that came out, if someone had screened it for me the day I had the idea, this is about as close as I've ever done. Because things are always, once you have a real idea of the thing, and then you make the thing, and then it tends to go like this. This film kind of stayed like this all the way through. All of the footage had dirt on it, some was at the wrong speed, and when Wyler processed in 1943 the initial film, he or a technician scratched it. There was scratches in the emulsion, so there's these blue lines in every single version of the Memphis Belle. They're there everywhere. And we digitally removed every shot we used. We call it the blue lines of death, and we digitally removed the blue lines, which I'm sure would have thrilled William Wyler to no end. And also to bring up the colors. This film was not colorized. This film was accentuated. We would put the color back that had faded from the Kodachrome, but always referencing the original colors. So there was no colorization involved, just bringing the color up and making the colors look as rich as they were at the time of filming. It's a compliment to be able to refer to Peter Jackson as a colleague, but all three of us were working on the same films at the same time. I can't speak for the other filmmakers. I will say that I think all three of us wanted to see this. All three are serious geeks. Peter Jackson's a World War I geek, I'm a World War II airplane geek, and I'm sure Todd Miller's a space geek. So we wanted to see this movie, and we felt other people would want to see it. And I was, again, not speaking for my colleagues, but my point was to create a cinematic time machine, to turn a theater into a time machine, to really put people back in time and to consciously use the power of a big screen to get people to look at the past differently, and then by looking at the past differently, maybe look at the future differently. It's dazzling, when the premiere, I knew we had this when I first saw it. I've been very confident about this film. My last film, A Gray State, was much more difficult to do. Just harrowing material. The Cold Blue was my kind of methadone for the Gray State. It was an antidote to that, how tough that project was. So I didn't really worry about it all that much. It just came together very simply, and it worked about as well as I thought it would. I'd like to be immodest and say, oh my God. But I made it really for me and my friends. I didn't really anticipate until it was done that it would have this kind of quote-unquote commercial or sort of response that it's gotten. But that's not unusual, I guess. People, I think the better you are as a filmmaker, maybe the more idiosyncratic you are, and unintentionally lucky that your idiosyncrasy is shared by an audience. It's great. Again, it's mandatory. Because you're in a theater, the surround sound, if the theater's kicking, and I'm sure so I'll be coming by to do a personal sound check. If your theater's kicking and it's turned up to 11, when you hear the flack in the back speakers, the sounds of 50 B-17s throttling up, it puts you back there along with this footage. So it really does, you just don't see this. No one will ever see the likes of this again, ever. And I mean the idea of 1,000 airplanes materializing over Britain and heading heading east to bomb Germany. That's not going to happen. 1,000 airplanes will never be in the air at the same time again. Dunkirk was a huge inspiration. I saw Dunkirk again. How could I not see Dunkirk in IMAX opening weekend if you're a World War II geek? You kind of have to. But what I liked was the way that the deconstructed soundtrack, the surround sound, and the practical, no CGI really get you in the middle of things. So I consciously, if there was a film that I was consciously trying to knock on, a door I was knocking on or trying to knock off, I would say it was Dunkirk with this film. No, I mean, he did what he did. You know, it's such a treasure trove. I mean, yes, do I wish there was more stuff? But in this theatrical run, the one thing we didn't get, because it was fraught, was you don't really see what damage the Germans are doing to the B-17s, because the people who are in the planes filming, you know, if they had done that kind of damage, the film wouldn't have come back. So we uncovered, for this theatrical appearance, we uncovered a Nazi newsreel that had wing-mounted cameras on German fighters as they're blowing B-17s out of the sky. And you really, the one thing I felt we didn't have enough of, the newsreel that opens this film gives us. So you really realize, holy mother of God, how close they're coming, and just what a 30mm cannon is doing to an airplane, and how relentlessly competent the Germans were about bringing these planes down. Oh, many, but this Nazi newsreel is intriguing me because I view it as the original fake news, and we've uncovered 300 hours of 35mm original nitrate Nazi newsreels that they made from '39 to 2 weeks before the war ended. And I want to take those newsreels, restore them, and create a narrative, in essence what the Nazis thought they were doing, unmediated narrative that sort of says, this is what, it's called their struggle. And it takes the mechanics of the Cold Blue and the Jackson film, and then moves it into a much more my turf, after my Herzog connection, a much darker, scarier realm. If the sound is calibrated to 11, they should expect to be transported back in time to the spring of 1943, and to walk away with an appreciation of what these guys lived and died to do and for.